any pictures you want to steal from me for the group, feel free. What I'll do is I'll post them on a cloud site, so you can just go through and download whichever ones you want.
How is it, Sherry?
You might be able to use the Wi-Fi here place too, Eric.
How's the feed, guys? All right. Well, this is the Idaho 3% here, filming for Redoubt News. Gonna start here in a couple minutes. So grab some popcorn and get ready. All right, thank you.
Check, check. Okay, we're about ready to start. I know there are a lot of people outside, so we've got about a minute remaining. Then we're going to start this event this evening. So those of you out in the hallway, if you want to come in and hear what the candidates have to say, now is the time to be here. And we do appreciate the candidates joining us this evening. And we will start in about a minute. So I think that's about it. I see a lot of familiar faces here. Okay. Thank you all for joining us here this evening. Brought to you by our friends at the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance, a true Idaho grassroots organization that has made a difference here in the state of Idaho. My name is Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio, and it's a privilege to be here this evening to see all of you that care so much about your right to keep and bear arms. Truly, it's not only in the local dialogue, but the national dialogue as well. And it's great that we have the candidates here this evening to talk about their ideas and their platforms for the Second Amendment if they become the next governor here in the state of Idaho. It's my privilege to introduce Eric Pruitt. He's a two-tour veteran of Iraq He has stage 4 melanoma skin cancer. He is a gentleman who cares very much about freedom and liberty, and it's my privilege to introduce him to give us our opening prayer. A big round of applause for Eric.
Our dear, kind, gracious Heavenly Father, we're so grateful for this opportunity to gather together as citizens of this great state, that we can attend this forum that deals with so many issues that are important to us as citizens. We're grateful for the people who worked tirelessly to put this event on. We're grateful for the candidates and their ability to come and share with us their thoughts and ideas. Father, we ask you to please be with the leaders of this great nation and our state, that they can come together to make sensible decisions that can both protect our freedoms and protect our families. We're once again grateful for the opportunity to be here, and we say these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Big round of applause for Eric. Lieutenant Governor Brad Little will not be here tonight due to a family emergency. We wish he and his family, you're on our thoughts and prayers, sir. And I know Brad Little that if he could be here, he would. So with that, we will introduce our first candidate for governor. We're going to have him say a few words, not about the Second Amendment, but have him introduce himself to you. We'll start with Congressman Raul Labrador. Thank you.
Well, good evening. It's great to be here with you tonight. I'm Congressman Raul Labrador. I understand that we're first going to introduce ourselves and then we're going to have an opening statement, correct? Most of you know me as the congressman from the 1st Congressional District. I'm going to give you a little background about myself. As most of you know, I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. I moved to Las Vegas when I was in high school. I was raised by a single mom. She was an amazing mother. But she taught me all the values that I needed to have so I could be successful in life. She taught me to work hard, to play by the rules, to be responsible. She wanted me to find a beautiful woman to marry someday and to be a good husband and a good father. And luckily for me, I've been able to do all those things. So it's a great honor to represent you in Washington, D.C. We have been married for 26 years. We have 5 children. My oldest is 25. My youngest is 15. We have 4 boys and 1 girl. My 4th child, and this is going to age me right now because I'm feeling a little bit old. My 4th child just turned 18 yesterday. So that means that I have 4 adult children, which I never thought that was going to happen. And now I'm getting to that age. And the most important thing for us right now, in 2 months, we're going to be grandparents for the first time. So we're really excited about that. I was in the legislature for 4 years, and I've been in Congress now for 8 years. During that time, I think I've had a proven, consistent record of conservatism, of fighting for the Second Amendment, fighting for the things that are important to the people of Idaho, and I hope that I can earn your trust and your support in this race. I'm Raul Labrador. Go to my website, raullabrador.com, and we will have a really nice conversation tonight about the Second Amendment and other issues that are important to all of you. Thank you very much.
And our second candidate here tonight, Dr. Tommy Ahlquist.
Thank you very much for the chance to be here tonight. I'm Tommy Ahlquist, a candidate for governor, and very excited to be here with you this evening. So a quick bio on myself. I grew up on a small farm in Hunter, Utah. Moved to Idaho in the 80s and played college basketball. I then went to medical school and then residency with specialty training in emergency medicine. I came back to Idaho after that and practiced for a total of 18 years in emergency rooms. I've seen over 40,000 patients as an ER doctor in the state of Idaho. And a lot of those were here in the Treasure Valley, but a lot of them were also in more of a rural setting in both Weiser and up in Blaine County. and very, very much enjoyed my time as an ER doc. It gave me a chance to really see people, hear people, and connect with people on a very intimate level, and I enjoyed my time there. I married my high school sweetheart, Shanna. We have 4 children, 2 older kids who played the worst joke they could this year on my wife and I. They both got married during this election this year, which was, we tried to talk them out of it, but finally decided that who are we to get in love's way? And they're doing great. We love our new son and daughter-in-law. Two younger kids we adopted that are 12 and 14. And fortunately, I'm here tonight with you, and unfortunately, my wife is home. I just got a call. They're studying genetics and genomes right now for science test tomorrow. So I think that's what I'll be doing when I get home later tonight. I consider myself more of a business guy than a doctor. I worked night shifts and weekends so that I could do business. And all coming up through high school and college, I was always a small business owner, an entrepreneur. I owned my own companies. And here in the Treasure Valley, I've been able to do several things. We started a med tech company in 2001 that's very successful. Started a commercial real estate company. We've been able to develop and own over 3 million square feet of commercial real estate in Idaho. And it's been a great experience. I'm sure tonight we'll get into a little bit of the whys behind running for governor. But let me just stay really high level for now, and that is that we live in the greatest country in the history of this planet, the United States of America, where we have opportunity, where we have freedoms, where we have a constitution that is the envy of the world. And we live in a state that is founded on those principles. It's been the greatest pleasure of my life meeting so many great friends around the state and understanding their values and work ethic and their heritage. And I believe that it's time to have a government that works as hard as its people, and a government that is as transparent as its people. I don't tolerate mediocrity very well in my life, and I won't tolerate mediocrity very well if I'm elected governor. So I look forward to a great night tonight discussing the Second Amendment, and look forward to earning your support in the coming weeks. Thank you very much.
Well, are you guys fired up tonight? Are you ready to talk about guns? Are you ready to talk about guns without being vilified? Are you ready to hear what they have to say? Well, I certainly am. And without further ado, let me introduce to you the gentleman that started this group, the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance. Many years ago, he said, why don't we have laws to protect citizens here in the state of Idaho? So he and a few of his friends stood outside of Boise Gun Company in the cold winter. Of course, winter is always cold except for this year here in Idaho. And got some signatures. And they said, look, I'm going to go to the legislature because in Idaho it's all about guns. And they'll pass bills. And much to his surprise, that didn't happen. The folks in the legislature didn't listen to him. He had 1,000, and then 5,000, and then 10,000 signatures. Many of you signed those original signatures, right? Those original statements of, hey, we want tougher gun laws. We want to protect the Second Amendment here in the state of Idaho. And in a world of cynicism and social media, this group that we see here tonight, the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance, is proof of the power of grassroots politics here in the state of Idaho. Concealed carry was passed. Campus carry was passed. We covered it, it seemed daily. Give yourselves a big round of applause on KIDO Talk Radio. We covered the events daily. And it is just amazing the impact that you can have here, not only this evening, but with this group. So, my pleasure to proudly introduce, big round of applause for Greg Pruitt from the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance.
Well, welcome everybody. I'm glad to have you here. I forgot my housekeeping list, so Seth took a picture for me. The downside is now I can't hold water. I've been either arguing or talking to reporters all day, and my mouth is really dry already. So thank you all for coming. It means a lot to us, and I know we've got people still coming in. But this was a long time in the making. Kevin knows, and he's been to our annual rallies. We do an annual rally usually, and with Governor Otter retiring, we thought, let's do something a little bit different than marching from the Boise Center on the Grove, where we normally go, up to the Capitol. We thought, hey, rather than sending out candidate questionnaires, let's see if we can get some of the candidates to come on stage and talk about guns, because let's be honest here, we are the largest voting bloc in the entire state by far. Before I get into that too much, I wanted to welcome any dignitaries that might be in the building. I don't know everybody that is here. I haven't seen everybody come in. The Nampa Police, I believe, also have a couple officers here. We want to thank our men and women in blue for their hard work. But most of all, I want to thank my wife. And these guys know how this goes. When you do politics, and the legislators down here in the front, they know this too, your spouse takes an enormous toll on putting up with all of this stuff. And before I flew into Boise, my wife got a concussion, a pretty bad one on the back of her head. And so I abandoned her with all 4 kids in a concussion, and I just felt awful. But my thoughts and prayers are with her, and I love you, honey, if you're watching at home. So thank you to her, because without her, honestly, I would not be able to do any of this. All right, we'll have Sean Hudgens. He's our cameraman somewhere. He's down here. He'll be roaming around, so don't worry. He's friendly. He might not look friendly, but he's friendly. Our chairman, Seth Rosquist, a big round of applause for him, because he's awesome. And then it looks like we are still live streaming on Facebook, which is fantastic. So hopefully we've got a lot of people at home watching on Facebook. So Kevin covered most of our history, which is on my housekeeping. Thank you, Kevin, for doing most of that for me. But he's right. I was super frustrated because I came back from Iraq and I thought, this is Idaho, and I saw Arizona, Wyoming, Vermont, and Alaska all had constitutional carry. And I looked around, I'm like, this is Idaho. I mean, the legislature is 85% in the House and the Senate Republican. And every single one of them in 2012 went out and told us on the campaign trail how pro-Second Amendment they were. And then I thought, hey, we'll go to the Capitol, I'll pass one bill, and I'll go home and spend the rest of my life with my family, not under a mountain of stress. It didn't turn out that way, so we had a long battle to get that done. And what Kevin talks about me, but honestly, I'm just one person. And those of them at the Capitol that like me, and there's very few, they know that it's not about me, it's about you guys. It's about the grassroots. And he's right. When the grassroots rises up for any issue, it doesn't even have to be just about guns, then that's when things start to change. When politicians, no offense to politicians in here, but when they think, hey, I might lose my job if I'm not doing what my constituents, or what I told the constituents I was going to do, then bad things start happening if you're a politician. You start losing your job. And some of them found that out when they voted against constitutional carry in 2016. Some of them lost their jobs. In fact, our bill sponsor for Representative Christy Zidell, she's pushing the House Bill 444, the Stand Your Ground bill. Thank you. She took on a 10-year incumbent, I think 10 or 11 years, or 14 or something, and beat him by 10 points. If you know anything about beating incumbents, no matter who it is, that's tough work. So, all right, you'll notice there's a petition on every chair for you guys to sign to support Stand Your Ground. If you support Stand Your Ground in the state of Idaho, we're going to be getting into that a little bit later. I have to do my due diligence for our 501 and telling you that this isn't easy or cheap or free. We discounted all of our memberships, and we don't have Bloomberg money. I don't have a Dad's Demand Action group in the state of Idaho that was funded by some billionaire that drops tons and tons of money. Every single donor we have are people that donate $5, $2, $25. And some do a little bit more once in a while, but it's all grassroots people, and just like you guys. So if you want to join up today, our special membership discount goes for 24 hours. So you have 24 hours to get the discounts on the memberships. And that all goes to help us fight for gun rights here in the state of Idaho. And as my staff and Kevin can attest, we use that money to do some serious damage. So we're happy to have you guys on board. All right. So everybody asks, well, why are we talking about guns in the state of Idaho? Doesn't the legislature all love guns? Anybody believe that? Folks, I don't know how close you're paying attention to what's going on around us, but Idaho is going to be purple very, very, very soon. Okay, I don't know if you all saw, we are the fastest growing state in the nation. And that's not all redneck gun-toting conservatives coming in, right? If you're paying attention, watch what happened to Oregon, watch what happened to Washington, watch what happened to California and Colorado. It's not going to be long before we are fighting to preserve everything we have passed into law. And that's the urgency from our organization. You're going to hear some legislators and some of our critics say, oh, you guys just want to raise money to do nothing. Folks, I can see it on the horizon. I've worked with people in other states. And they say Idaho's next. We are next. Idaho or Nevada will be very, very, we're going to be fighting for our Second Amendment freedoms really hard here. And so that's why we're pushing so hard to pass stand your ground and constitutional carry and all the other topics that we're talking about today. So with that, a couple housekeeping, please. You can leave your phones on, but please put them on vibrate or silence if you have them. Photography's fine, video's fine. We don't care. We're pretty open about all that. So no big deal there. There's bathrooms out there. Try to limit your flash on your cameras, please. Candidates, I'm sure you guys all have tables out there where I don't know, you guys sticking around after 7:30 for a few minutes to say hi out on your tables? Okay, so they'll be out there afterwards, pictures and other questions and whatnot that you guys have for them. And let's see, and then we have our own table out there with swag and shirts and all that kind of stuff. Anybody see the big stack of petitions out there? 7,000 for Stand Your Ground and already. Not that certain chairmen in the legislature care to give you a public hearing on it, but we'll talk about that later. So, all right. With that, we are going to start with our. Oh, I almost forgot. A big thank you to our good friend Kevin Miller from 580. He has given us a huge platform on his radio show, and my good friend Eric Macrush, who used to work for the Idaho Freedom Foundation, introduced me to Kevin, and that was one of a lot of interviews. But Kevin's been a great mouthpiece for our organization and lots of other organizations and people who care about freedom, so we really appreciate all of his hard work. So thanks again, Kevin. All right, with that, are your mics working? I think you can probably take your. So with that, we did it. So we don't want anyone to accuse us of playing favorites to anybody. And as these guys know, I don't play favorites to anyone. I don't. So we actually did a Facebook Live drawing, when was that? Several months ago, on who was going to go first for the introductions. Congressman Labrador will go first. I believe Lieutenant Governor Little was supposed to go. Obviously, he's not here now, and so Dr. Alquist will go after that. So 2 minutes tops about Second Amendment and anything gun related you want to talk about. So thank you. Congressman Labrador, everybody.
Thank you. So I talked about my family, but I did forget to introduce my wife, Becca. Please say hi to her. And maybe in my next life, I'm going to have Kevin Miller's voice. When he gets up, his enthusiasm and his voice, I wish I had a voice like that. It's pretty amazing. So about 3 weeks ago, this is something I haven't talked about in public at all. About 3 weeks ago, as most of you know, I was in a train accident with my wife. We were on our way from Washington, D.C. to West Virginia. And the first thing that happened is that we didn't realize what happened, and we found out that we had just hit a truck. It was a garbage truck that was going across the train tracks. And guess what the first thought every member of Congress had? That it was something terrible, that it was something that we were getting attacked. And the first thing that we started thinking about was what's going to happen. And immediately I saw all these Capitol Police who came out with their guns. And every one of them was there to protect me, to protect every member of Congress. And as I was watching that, all of a sudden I looked up and there was a helicopter that was flying over our train. And we could see some snipers who were protecting us and making sure that everything was okay, because they had to investigate exactly what happened, because it's not every day that a train hits a garbage truck that is going across the train tracks. And what I kept thinking about that whole time is how fortunate we were that we were being protected. And the thought that came to mind is that not every American has that in their lives, where they have people protecting them at all times. And this is precisely why we have the Second Amendment. Because not everyone can have a police officer right next to them every single day of their lives. Not everyone can have the Capitol Police with them everywhere they go, when they're on the train, when they're doing those things. And the problem in Washington, D.C., and sometimes in Idaho, is that people forget that the Second Amendment is an individual right. It's a right that we have to protect ourselves. It's not because we want to go hunting. It's not because we just want to own guns. It's because we want to make sure that as individuals we're protected at all times. And when something happens in your life, whether it be a garbage truck going across the train tracks, or whether somebody goes into your home, you want to know that you can protect yourself and that you never have to worry about your safety and your security. That's why I believe in the Second Amendment, and that's why I think you should vote for me, because I understand how important it is, this individual right that God has granted us and that our founding fathers put in the Constitution. Thank you very much.
I like the warning bell. That's new.
Yes.
That's new. You have to ring that loud, I bet, a couple times tonight. Well, you know, for me, I'll tell you, my family, we're a gun family. We have a heritage of that in our family. We love to go shooting together. My son would be considered an enthusiast to the extreme. He's in college now, and I need to tell him to just stop it. But that's not what this is about. I couldn't agree with Congress Labrador more. This is not about hunting. This is not about the hobby. This is about the Second Amendment. We have a Constitution that is the envy of the rest of the world. This Constitution protects us. This Constitution is clear, it is simple, and it is straightforward. The Second Amendment is the most important amendment because it protects the rest. And I think that if we forget that and get off track, that's exactly what the media, that's exactly what other distractors want us to do. I've been around gun violence. I will never forget, as a resident in my entire life, a little boy I took care of who was sitting on his front porch on his birthday and was shot straight through his heart. I will never forget putting my finger through that hole with my glove, or going out and telling his parents that he had died. But it wasn't the gun. We have to remember that. It wasn't the gun, especially during tragic times like we've had over the last 2 weeks. We have to educate people what the problem is. I know we'll get into this tonight, but let's remind ourselves, as these questions come tonight, what we're here to talk about tonight, and that's the Constitution, the Second Amendment, and how Idaho can be the example to the rest of the country, how we protect our rights. Look forward to the discussion tonight, and I think we'll go forward now, so thank you.
All right, so the way we'll roll with this, Congressman Labrador also drew the question first. So he'll be answering the first question as well. Hey, we did it fair and square, Congressman, my bad. But he will answer first, and then Dr. Alquist will answer the question second, and then each additional question will rotate, which the rotation is much easier right now, I guess, but without three people. So my good chairman here will hopefully keep me on track and making sure that order is correct and everything. Each question has a specific amount of time. We'll announce that time for each question. We have our former chairman, Zach Brooks, down here in the front helping me run the timer, and we were super classy, and we got a bike bell to let them know when their time was up. Go ahead. Oh, yeah. That's how classy we are. So, other than that, if there's any direct challenges from one of the other candidates to another candidate, we'll have some time to respond and so forth. But with that, what we tried to do, we reached out to gun owners and said, hey, what topics do you want us to cover? And we wrote all the questions based on those topics. We have the topics that were the most important that we wanted to get through tonight first. And so we have those in a pile here. And then we have an additional set of questions that if we have time before 7:30 to do, we'll dump those in the pile as well, and we'll try to get through as many questions as we have, but we appreciate it. So, all right, guys, here we go. You're hoping for the easy one, aren't you?
I'd rather go second.
All right, the topic is universal background checks. A citizen who buys a firearm through an FFL dealer goes through a background check. Private transactions, however, between citizens are not required to go through a background check. Some states, including Oregon and Washington, require sales on private transactions, even those occurring between family members and friends. Do you support implementing a universal background check system in Idaho? Why or why not? And would you veto such a measure if it hit your desk? You have 1 minute.
Right, I do not support universal background checks. I think that when there's sales between private people, especially between family members, that there should be no background checks. I would veto any bill that tries to institute that in the state of Idaho. I think the law that we have right now for sales at gun shops and other stores, I think that's sufficient for what we need to do, and I just wouldn't support it.
So, I think from the real world that I live in with you, in all of our business dealings, the government is too intrusive in almost everything. So tonight we're talking about Second Amendment, which is very important, but the last thing we need is more regulation, more information. You know how it is when you go in and buy a gun. You fill out the questionnaire and they do the background check. We have enough. That's plenty. And even with that, what are the good reasons? Why are we doing this? Let's make sure that we're keeping ourselves safe, but also let's make sure we're protecting our rights. And I think that's the point, right? We have enough regulation. It's there. And let's not let anything more happen to that. And I agree. I veto any other expansion of those searches.
So one of the reasons these guys may end up agreeing on a lot of issues, the great news is that you now have them on record, on video, making those promises, right? And that's what it's all about. So, next question is about, I'm going to say quotations, assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. All right? In recent years, some states have implemented bans on what some call assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. To date, no legislature in Idaho has proposed such a ban. Would you support any type of assault weapons or high-capacity magazine ban should one be introduced? If so, what would you include in such a ban? If not, would you veto such a measure if it got to your desk? You have 1 minute.
I think we're going to sit down.
Yeah, you can sit down.
Is that all right? I think, first of all, there's a big misconception about what AR even is. It's not assault rifle. It's Armalite, and I think that we need to educate people on what we're actually talking about here. The other thing, when we talk about magazines and capacities and caliber, there's also a lot of misinformation there. So again, going back to my career in medicine, it is very easy to have a knee-jerk reaction and treat the symptom instead of the disease. We will not make any dents in anything going on by putting any restrictions on equipment, any types of equipment, including assault rifles or Armalite rifles, as it should be better described. So absolutely not. I do not think that we should have any bans on any weapons.
So I think this might be the most boring debate in the history of the world, because I don't know how much we're going to disagree on any of these issues. I don't think there should be any ban on any kind of weapons. We already have a ban on automatic weapons, and I don't think we should ban any additional weapons in the United States. And when the media says that we need to ban automatic weapons, they misunderstand exactly what an automatic weapon is. We already have that ban in the United States. But what we really need to look at is the culture in the United States. We have a problem. We had children going to school 20 years ago, 30 years ago with guns. They would have rifles. As you know, everybody in Idaho had their pickup. They had their racks, and they would go to school with guns. And people were not shooting at other people in those days. So we have a different issue, and it's not a gun problem. It's a family problem, it's a society problem, it's a culture problem, and that's what needs to be addressed. We have young men that feel alone in this world, that have no parental figures in their lives, and we need to figure out how we as a community can come together and help those young men feel like they're part of the community. It's not about guns, it's about society, and that's what we need to solve. Yeah.
I'm going to do my best to find some disagreements here.
Oh, yes, I would veto it. I thought I made that clear. Sorry.
What about magazines?
So, well, hold on. All right. So now we have an off-script follow-up now. Does that mean, you talked about the automatic weapons ban. Do you believe the automatic weapons should be banned in this? Who's this got to first? Congressman Labrador, and then Dr. Alquist. You have 30 seconds.
You know, we have so many issues that we're dealing with. I don't think they should be banned, but the reality is that they're banned, and I don't think we should engage in. We're worried right now about losing our rights. I don't know that we need to engage in the fight about trying to make automatic weapons legal. I think we need to make sure that we avoid any further eroding of our rights.
I'm sure we'll disagree at some point, but I agree with Congressman Labrador on that as well.
So was that a yes or a no?
Yes. But we should not pursue anything.
Well, that's not, well, what we're trying to say here is that certainly automatic weapons are not going to be overturned any time, but I think a lot of gun owners like to know, in your head.
I believe that it should be banned, but I don't think we should be spending our time trying to do that. Yeah.
And Dr. Alquist, did you have a position on whether they should or should not?
The same exact position. Again, if you're going to make it about the equipment, it's across the board. It's not about the equipment. It's about the other societal problems we have.
All right. Awesome. All right. Next question. Next question is about preemption. Idaho has a preemption statute that prohibits cities and counties from enacting firearm ordinances that are stricter than state law, and largely prohibits them from making ordinances in regards to firearms, accessories, and ammunition. However, Idaho's current preemption law has no punishment for officials who knowingly and willingly violate this statute. And as a quick example, the city of Coeur d'Alene, for instance, we've actually fought, our organization has overturned 60 anti-gun signs and ordinances all across the state since we started. However, there is no accountability or any way for a citizen to hold elected officials accountable who are, and the key word here is knowingly and willfully violating that statute, because we've found a lot of parks departments will put up signs not knowing that they're violating the law. Do you believe there should be a punishment for those elected officials if they do violate the preemption statute, and what do you think that might look like if you did?
So knowing and willingly are two of the important words. The last word that's very important to me is clarity. I think we need clarity, and we should applaud your organization for what you've done to bring that clarity into communities where a lot of this is not knowingly done, and then you bring it to their attention, and we get that conformity and clarity. I think that's what we need. In Idaho, with the values we have, and with our love for the Second Amendment, we should lead the way. We should be the example for the rest of the country on several of these issues, and preemption is one of those, where we have local jurisdictions that understand with clarity the law and follow the law. And I do agree, if they're willfully going against that there should be some sort of punishment, because otherwise it loses that clarity that we all desire.
So I'm not sure what the punishment should be, but the reality is that what we need to do is make sure that our preemption statute is even stronger and explains to the cities and the counties that those laws will not be valid, so that a court can invalidate those courts clearly. So maybe we need to look at the way the statute, and I haven't looked at it in a long time, so maybe we need to look at the way the statute is written, so we can clarify to the cities and counties that they do not have the ability to preempt state law on these issues. And I'm going to speak on state law for a second. There's a real strong confusion in state government sometimes, because we always say we don't want the federal government to tell the states what to do, and people claim that we're being hypocritical when we as a state tell the cities what to do. What people forget is that the states created the United States, so we should be supreme as a state. The states also created the cities, so we can tell the cities what to do. And many people in the media try to tell you that we can't and that we're being hypocritical, but there's nothing hypocritical. It's about who created whom. The states created the nation, and the states created the cities. And we can tell the cities if we want to preempt certain things or not.
Yeah, we've been drafting proposals over the last few years on potentially some punishments. Other states have, where an elected official is knowingly and willfully violating that can be sued by the citizens, and he cannot use city or county money to counter that suit. He would have to do it on his own dime. So those are some of the proposals we've been looking at. But all right, now the fun one. We got the fun one out here. Who's going first? All right. Congressman Labrador. Castle Doctrine and stand your ground. So this is a really important topic, obviously, here in the state of Idaho currently. That's one of the battles going on in the legislature currently. Our attorney, Alexander Kincaid, who drafted HB 444, was going to be here. She got stung by a wasp, and I didn't even know they were alive right now, or out right now. But she is really, really allergic, and so our thoughts and prayers are with her as she fights through that. So I'm going to do my best. I'm not a legal scholar, so if you have specific legal questions, I may not be able to answer those. Back in 2013, so I'm going to give a little bit of background for everybody. Back in 2013, we passed, there was a magazine that came out, Guns and Ammo, and if you guys all remember this, we were ranked 32nd in the nation just in 2013 on our gun laws. And so we started looking at the stand your ground law and said, how do we make it better? And that's when we went to our attorney and said, let's make this law much stronger than it already is for Idaho citizens. And so she came up with, and I asked her, because I'm not an attorney, I said, what are the holes in our stand your ground and Castle Doctrine laws that need to be fixed? And she said, well, one of the first is when somebody breaks into your home and you shoot them, you are not presumed innocent. You are actually guilty of murder until you can articulate a story good enough to show that you are innocent. And she said good states like Florida and Texas and others actually switch that and say that as soon as that bullet leaves your gun, you are presumed innocent. And the reason you do that is because you've had this tragic situation where you had to kill somebody in your own home, and you're not in your usual right mental state to articulate a story necessarily to keep you out of prison. That was one of the big holes. There's no criminal immunity in the state of Idaho. So if a prosecutor decides to make an example out of you, he can do that. He can take you to court and ruin you financially, and there's nothing you can do about it because they have immunity. And so we've looked at two different bills. We actually did they give you the bills, your respective campaigns? Okay. And so we have criminal immunity in HB 444, and that's to help protect you guys as gun owners. It has actual stand your ground. In the state of Idaho, stand your ground. The judges have determined you can stand your ground and you don't have duty to retreat. But, there's a big but in there, if the prosecutor can convince the jury a reasonable person would have done something differently, now they can take you to jail. Okay, that's a giant hole in our stand your ground law. So that's some of the big key ingredients that we were looking at in the stand your ground law this year. So with that in mind, you had two bills that we sent to you, HB 444 and SB 1313. Which, if any of the two bills before the legislature, would you prefer And would you sign or veto either of the measures? And you have 2 minutes.
So I would sign 444. I would also sign 1313. Whichever one can get to the desk of the governor, I would sign. I understand that Representative Cito has been working really hard on 444. I read it today. Frankly, it's the first time I had read through the bill. I had read about the bill, obviously in the media. I think it's very well drafted. It's very well written. And we need to clarify something. The law in Idaho is very clear about stand your ground. The problem is that it's clear in case law, and it's not in statutes. So if you have an activist judge who decides that they want to change the law later, or an activist court that wants to change the law later, we are in danger of doing that. So I think the work that Representative Cito and others are doing is very important, because we need to codify what has been pretty clear law in the state of Idaho. I think it's since 1909 or something like that. So I'm grateful for the work that you're doing. I would sign either bill, so I think it's up to the legislature to decide. I believe the job of a governor is to work with the legislature. There are some things in your bill that are really strong that, you know, if the other bill is the one that's going to be going through, we need to make sure those things are in the other bill as well. But I think they're both good pieces of legislation, and I would support it. I do have one clarification. Our self-defense instructions in court do clearly say that this law applies even though the person being attacked, defended, might more easily have gained safety by flight or by withdrawing from the scene. I think that's a good thing that the jury instructions, but we obviously cannot rely just on jury instructions. We need to make sure that that is clearly in our statutes. Anyway, thank you.
So I think this is a great example of where Idaho should lead, and appreciate the work that you're doing, because it is in case law, and I think the jury instructions are clear as well. But Idaho should have statutes that clearly define this, and I think that's what everyone wants, is clarity on this. I've read both of the bills, and I think that, again, great concepts in both. Whichever one would get through, I think they both deserve some debate. It's hard when some of these get hung up in committee, and I would like to see a governor that actually leads during a session and says, hey, let's get these out so they can be vigorously debated. Make sure that we're getting all sides of an issue. And then, you know, I know with a lot of legal contracts, wording makes a big difference. And we need to make sure when these things go through that the wording is very, very clear. The rights are protected, but that all sides have been heard, and then they go through in the proper order and get a hearing. So I would love to see them debated. I'd love to see them get through, and applaud you for your work to try to get these into statute. And so would sign either one if they could get through the process.
All right, so
Can I clarify something that I think it's really important, because I think if you look at, and it has nothing to do with gun laws, but with the legislature, I think it's really important that the next governor of the state have a really good relationship with the legislature, and specifically with the conservative, liberty-minded legislators that I and I have spoken to leadership in our state legislature, and I have told them about my experiences in Washington, D.C. We created the Freedom Caucus in Washington because we had our leadership putting their thumbs down on everything that we wanted to do. And I don't want that to happen in Idaho. I didn't have that when I was in the state legislature. I had a good speaker who allowed me the freedom and the ability to actually get things done, even when he disagreed with me. And I encourage the leadership of our state to do that with the state legislators that are here today.
all right, so to be fair, Dr. Alquist, we'll give you 1 minute to add any additions you want there.
Well, the only thing that I'll add is I applaud our legislators, but to me, as an outsider, the real world doesn't work like this, where the governor does a state address, goes and hides, and you have a legislator that may or may not get things out of committee. It just, to me, it's so foreign from reality and leadership. So I look forward to strong leadership where there's actually an agenda It's transparent. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine if we were out actually talking about what we're trying to accomplish and had an agenda of what we were trying to get through and work with the legislature? I cannot wait to work a year in advance and talking about what we're going to get accomplished and then help lead. I think that either one of us will do that, but we need strong executive leadership in this state, and that'll be a refreshing start for all of us.
And Congressman Labrador brought up something interesting because he had mentioned the case law and the jury instructions in the stand your ground that says you don't have to retreat, you don't have, and they can't consider. The problem is the case law that we've been having recently in the 2014 Iverson case, they threw it out because it's not in statute, like you mentioned. They were like, yeah, whatever. They said a reasonable person would have done something differently, and they totally took it out on Iverson. And I'm not defending Iverson necessarily, but it was proof that we've got to get this into statute and solidified to help protect you guys. So, all right, are we on Dr. Elquist now? Hey. All right.
We're putting you to sleep.
He's my right-hand man. All right, in 2014, Idaho passed what is known as campus carry, the ability of students to be able to carry on college campuses. To clarify, it was actually already legal to carry on a college campus. What they were trying to do was add some administrative protections for students to prevent students from getting expelled if they carried a firearm on. Currently, you have to have an enhanced carry license that they created back in 2013. How or would you expand campus carry, or did you oppose campus carry in the beginning, and what is your plan?
Well, again, I think this notion of gun-free zones or safe zones are anything but safe, and so the fact that we have guns on these campuses makes them safer. So I'm very much for that. When you say expanded, you can already carry it on campus. I think that I applaud that, and that was great leadership by this group. When you talk about expanding that to places where there are thousands of people, for example, Taco Bell Arena, as an ER doc, we took tragedy and terrorism very serious. Every year we would have a mock tragedy, and we would bring people in, and there are really bad people in the world. So anywhere there is law enforcement that were like brothers to us in the ER, and they were there with guns, and we had ways to keep terrorists out and really evil people that exist in the world. I think that that's a better way to go with big events with like Taco Bell Arena. But I think I applaud the guns on campus, and I think they're safer because of it.
Did you have anything, sorry, follow up, did you have anything specific on how you would expand it?
No, I was waiting for a specific for you. I think that the fact that we have them on campus is great, and I didn't know any other specific locations you would like them other than the places that I would just mention with large gatherings of thousands of people. But I think that do you have any specifics to ask?
Well, I wanted to see if you had a plan first, but since you asked, well, let's say right now it's an enhanced permit. What about constitutional carry on college campus? What about there are you cannot have a firearm locked in your dorm even. There are specific buildings, like you mentioned, the Bronco Stadium, which you actually used to be able to carry and you can't any longer. What about expanding to those places, or lowering from an enhanced permit to a standard permit or constitutional carry?
Yeah, I think it depends on the location. I think stadiums, Taco Bell Arena, are different than in the dorms. You need to see the specific locations and what kind of concerns that we have from making sure that law enforcement understands that as well and working with them. But I'm a big believer that in leadership, and if we come together and say what's best, what keeps us safest, that lowering those permits to be constitutional carry out when they should be, and then protecting the larger areas where there's thousands of people would be the way it is now.
Thank you. Sorry, you have 2 minutes, by the way.
So I supported the legislation when it was first introduced, and I think we need to look at different areas. As Tommy said, actually banning guns at schools has not made schools safer. And I think it's really important that we don't look just at colleges, but we should look at our high schools. We should actually allow teachers to have guns in school. We should have parents allowed to walk into schools with guns. People who are carrying a gun are actually making their communities safer. And when we prevent people from carrying their guns, these have become soft targets. And that's why these people, these horrible, horrible, evil people are picking soft targets. I have a friend who told me a story about, I think it was Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro was actually a student at a Jewish school. Does that mean I'm done? One more. Okay. Ben Shapiro was a student at a Jewish school about many, many years ago when somebody shot up the Jewish community center right next to his school. And I had not heard this story before, but that shooter was going to go to the school first. And the reason he didn't go to the school is because he saw two guards standing in front of the school, and he decided not to go into the school. He decided to go to the community center next door because he knew that there would be nobody there who would be protecting those people. So we need to have more teachers, more adults, that they can protect our children, they can protect the people of Idaho, and we can have a safer community. It's horrible what's happening in the United States, and I think keeping guns away, having these gun-free zones, is not making us safer, it's making us less safe.
All right, so I guess a quick follow-up for both of you. Short answer, yes or no, possibly here. Assuming all the restrictions on location of dorms and Taco Bell arena, anywhere over 1,000 is what it actually is. So anywhere that anybody can already carry with an enhanced permit, would you support constitutional carry in those exact same places? So we're not looking at opening up the potential new places necessarily. I would like that, but for this particular question, would yes or no on constitutional carry on the places you can already carry enhanced, but maybe not in the dorms in those places?
Yes.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you. All right. Next, who we got first? Congressman Labrador. This is about constitutional carry expansion, and we're going to add this as a two-part question. There actually is a bill in the Senate right now, Senate Bill 1293, to do one of these. So when we passed constitutional carry back in 2016, yay for gun owners. We have kind of a jumbled mess right now in the state of Idaho. And they wanted the law to be uniform, and we actually killed one of the bills that would have made it uniform because they were actually going to remove gun rights away from people. And we said, let's not remove gun rights, let's expand it. So what you have right now is non-residents, our friends from Washington and Oregon, and there's a lot of good ones on the eastern side of those states. Non-residents can come into the state of Idaho, they can carry their handguns with no permit outside of city limits anywhere. They can carry their shotguns and their rifles anywhere in the state concealed, including in their vehicles with no permit. The only place non-residents can't carry their handguns without a permit is inside of city limits. Okay, so that's going to be one of the expansions that we are looking at as an organization and gun owners are looking for, is to basically make that uniform and say, non-residents can carry their handguns in city limits. The Second Amendment applies everywhere. The second one is there are states now that are passing constitutional carry that are putting the age limit at 18, not 21. Our state has 21. I believe Missouri or Kansas was the first state to actually do it at 18 for constitutional carry. You can actually open carry at 18 right now. So, two-part question. Do you support, across the board, constitutional carry for all law-abiding citizens, assuming they're not prohibited, number one, and would you support lowering the age limit for constitutional carry from 21 to 18? And this is 1 minute.
Okay. So on the first question, I'm going to have to be a little careful because I'm not sure I understood exactly what the difference is. So I would have to look at the legislation. I mean, I think my initial inclination is yes, but I want to look at the language. I want to look at the legislation, exactly what the distinctions are and what you're trying to fix with the legislation. So I hate to just tell you, since we are being taped, and you're going to come to me when I'm the governor and you're going to be saying, hey, you said this. I want to make sure that I'm reading the things clearly. So my initial inclination is yes, but I want to make sure that I look at the legislation. I have not looked at that legislation. So that's number one, but it sounds like something I could support. The second one, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So on the first one, first of all, congratulations again for all your work on getting constitutional carry through. I think that on all these, we need clarity. We need language that works, that protects our rights, but also allows us to get bad guys. And I do think that we need to be careful across borders, especially with everything that's going on around us, that we work with law enforcement on this, our great local law enforcement that put themselves out there for us, that they don't have any issues with this. But I am 100% confident with leadership and with language and working with them that we could get to where we need to be. But I want to put the caveat on this one because I'm not sure sometimes how that might work, knowing who's a bad guy and who's not, who's a law-abiding citizen and who's not when they're coming in from out of state. So that's the caveat I would have on that.
Okay, interesting. So just for clarification for everybody that doesn't know, out of the 13 states that do have constitutional carry, only 3 states require you to be a resident: Idaho, Wyoming, and North Dakota. Vermont, Maine, New Hampshire, Kansas, Missouri, West Virginia, Alaska, all the rest of them, you can be a citizen of Idaho and travel to their states freely and exercise your Second Amendment rights, open or concealed. And somehow in the wild, wild west of Idaho and Wyoming, we set this precedent of, we're going to kind of treat you like a second-class citizen if you aren't from here. So anyway, all right, we almost threw all the couple more. All right, this is actually one that is very relevant to what President Trump said today. The killer in Las Vegas in October of 2017 used what is commonly called a bump stock. A bump stock allows a shooter to shoot their semi-automatic weapon at a more rapid rate, but still functions as a semi-automatic. There are calls in some states, and if you didn't see the news, President Trump has now asked Attorney General Jeff Sessions to look at banning bump stocks and actually any device that increases the rate of fire. Let's assume for a moment that it doesn't happen at the national level. You support a bump stock ban, yes or no? And if it happened to come to your desk at the state level, is that something you would veto or sign? And
I think it's
sorry,
back,
1 minute. 1 minute.
I think it's back to our original questions. We're blaming the wrong things here. It's not going to be a piece of equipment that's going to change this. It's just not. We need to start talking about root causes that hopefully we begin in this country talking about and starting actually addressing the problems instead of blaming the equipment. And no, that's something that I would not support.
I would not support it. I would veto it. It's clear that you can do with your finger the same thing that a bump stock can do. And in fact, if you go online, and one of my good friends in Congress, Thomas Massey, he actually created the same effect with a power tool, and to show that even if those things were banned, that you could do the same thing with a power tool. So I just don't think that's necessary.
Okay. All right, so this next question is about school shootings. You touched on this a little bit earlier, Congressman Labrador, so you stole some of your own thunder, but...
So I don't have to answer the question?
That's up to you, I guess, but... so this is 2 minutes, and, obviously in the wake of another tragedy out of Florida, our thoughts and prayers are with the victims, and yet another senseless tragedy, how would you stop or attempt to stop mass shootings in schools or just gun violence in schools in general?
Since I already touched on that, I won't take the whole
2 minutes.
But I think we need to look at society very clearly. I shared with you guys how I was raised by a single mom, and I grew up in a single parent home. I was the only child. And my mother taught me certain principles, certain morality, certain issues. But the most important thing she did for me is she created an environment where I felt that I was loved, that I was needed, that I was wanted. And I think there's too many children in our society who don't feel that way. One of the things she did is we joined the LDS Church mostly because she was looking for an environment where there were adults who cared about me and who cared about my future. She surrounded me with people that loved me and cared for me. And I think we need to do that as a society. That's not a government responsibility. That's a societal responsibility. We need to look out for those people that are out there. I do not believe that it is banning a gun that is going to prevent these things is actually loving these children and actually doing the things that are necessary to bring up their character and their development. And then, like I explained earlier, I also believe that teachers should be armed, that people should have the ability to, teachers should have the ability to defend their children, not with their bodies as they did in some of these tragedies, but that they could actually do it with a gun, that they can go out there and protect those children. And I believe that parents should be allowed in the schools and that teachers should be allowed to carry guns. And that there should be some trained people in the schools, not just the officers that are there, but some of the teachers should actually be trained to be able to protect the children in those classrooms.
So I'd say, first of all, in this great country we live in, that can you imagine that we send our kids off to school and that they are not safe? And it is tragic, it's horrific, and no parent shouldn't be the worry as we send these little precious children off to school. I will also tell you there is evil in this world. When I was an ER doc in Tucson, it seemed like all the crazy stories were from there, but I walked into a room and there was an evil person there with a firearm ready to take everyone out to that emergency room. There is evil around us. And where does that evil go when they want to kill lives? They go to safe zones that are not protected. And they go there, and no amount of regulation on the gun is going to stop what they do. Their plan, their evil, their intentions are to go kill people. We must, especially here in this great state, do more. In 2007, I think was the last time that we took a deep look into our schools of how safe they are. I think it's probably time to do that again and look through policies and what we're doing. I agree with Congressman Labrador on the protections that we need there. There actually is a law and statute here, and I don't know the chapter and verse where we do have the ability for local school districts to vote to have teachers carry firearms at school. And I do believe we need to look at everything so that we can sleep at night knowing that our schools are safer and that we will not have a tragedy like this in Idaho, or at least do everything that we can to prevent this.
There's a quick follow-up in the same order. I guess yes or no. Do you support the repeal of the Gun-Free School Zones Act? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Let's talk a little bit about NICS background check system. The Sutherland, Texas killer was able to legally purchase firearms because the NICS system failed to flag him as a prohibited individual. There are current efforts, and I believe that, I could be wrong, I believe Mrs. Sanders today in her press conference had mentioned they're looking at the expanded background check, the NICS fix, I believe is what they're calling it. Do you support expanding the NICS system? Why or why not? And 1 minute.
Well, so again, I think that what are the current problems? What's the data? Where are we missing things? I think that I would love to see that. But I think, again, we've gathered enough information. Even at this last week's shooting, if you look at all of the warning signs that were there, something should have been done. There should have been intervened. And I think we start blaming all these systems when really there's enough data there. It's not a data problem. It was not properly handling the case once it was known. So I think we've got to be very careful before we expand any information that we're giving. And I'd love to see the data on that.
So there's a bill before Congress right now that deals with NICS fix, and it does have some problems in it. In committee, we tried to kill it, and in fact, we almost killed it in committee. As you know, as you were following the issue, we had all the votes to kill that bill in committee, and then last minute somebody changed their vote, and it was able to go to the floor. One of the main issues that the NICS fix bill has is that in some instances it does not provide enough due process for people who are trying to have their guns, that the government's trying to take their guns away. I do believe that we need to figure out why this young man was not in the system with all of the things that people knew about him, why we failed as a society to stop this young man from doing what he did. But we also need to make sure that the due process rights of people that we're trying to take their gun rights away from them that are strictly followed. So That bill is not my preferred bill, and I think we could have made some changes, which we tried to do in committee, that would have fixed the bill, and I think it would have been better to have the appropriate due process, and that was possible.
All right, thank you. I'm supposed to open this one. All right. So we went through the meat of most of our questions, so we're going to be down to the last few here. Reporting requirements. You support, somebody loses their firearm or it's stolen. Do you believe, or would you sign a bill that gave mandatory reporting requirements to the police? There are some states that do this already. And that is 1 minute. Yeah, come.
Who is it?
It's yours.
Okay, I do not support mandatory reporting. I would encourage every citizen who loses their gun to contact the local police department, and especially if it's stolen, to contact the local police department. But you will know about me, I don't support many things that are mandatory, so.
Nothing to add. I agree with Congressman Labrador on that.
These next ones we should breeze through pretty quick, I think, but we'll at least get you on record. So, waiting periods. I think Wisconsin was one of the last states to repeal a waiting period to buy a defensive handgun. It was a 48-hour waiting period. California does have some waiting periods. Do you support any type of waiting periods on purchasing a handgun, ammunition, anything of the sort? Yes or no?
No, the system works great. I bought 2 guns, one for my son and my son-in-law for Christmas, and the checks happen right there, and it's just fine. And I don't see any reason for have a waiting period. I've never heard a coherent argument to have one.
Some states, I believe, actually some cities, I should say, in the state of California, San Jose became the first city in the country, I believe, to say that when you leave home, your firearms must be locked in a safe. And that includes even if you have a 10 or 14 or 15-year-old. What they're trying to say is that you've got kids at home, you leave, and your guns are out, and then your kids get a hold of your firearms. Would you support mandatory safes or mandatory, I guess your firearms being locked up is mandatory once you leave home if you are the owner?
No, but once again, we should be responsible as a society, and I think we should have our guns safely in our homes. I do, and I believe that Tommy does as well, and I think we just need to have better education, but no, I do not support any law like that.
I would agree with that completely. I would say one thing on training maybe to add to it. I mean, I think there are great resources here in our community in getting training and being safe. None of that mandatory, of course, but I look at Forward Movement Training Center just in our midst right here where you can go get excellent training and be exposed to situations that might help you when it's time to defend yourself, but none of this should be mandatory, including the safes. But as an ER doc, great idea.
Trying to get to the other questions that we wanted to get to. In Congress right now, there's a bill before that's actually been sitting in, I can't remember who's got this bill. I think Paul Ryan has this bill, the suppressor bill. Removing suppressors or silencers is a Class 3 NFA item. Is a bill before Congress. Suppressors are designed to lower the decibel level of a gunshot so that it is less damaging to the ear. Do you believe Congress should pass this bill and move it forward to remove it as a Class 3 item? 1 minute. No, 30 seconds, actually.
Yeah, this is the Jeff Duncan bill that he's actually working with some Idaho companies to pass this bill that we make some excellent suppressors here in the state. And it's a safety issue for the people that are shooting. You all know, as you shoot, how loud it is, and I think I would support that bill, yes. In fact, I believe I'm the co-sponsor of the bill, so.
I think it was appropriate for Congressman Labrador to take that. Great answer.
Finger technology. Do you support government-mandated smart gun technology that would render a firearm inoperable to anyone other than the owner of that firearm in 30 seconds?
No.
Firearm and ammo purchase limits. Some states don't allow you to purchase so many firearms within a given time period. I think I actually saw New York is going to try and say that you cannot buy more than 20 rounds of ammo in a 3-month period. So God bless Idaho, but do you support any type of limits on how many firearms or how much ammunition an individual can buy in any given amount of time?
I'm just doing the math in my head. I have a 14-year-old daughter who goes through ammo faster than anything. I could probably save me some money, but no. A horrible idea.
No, and I'm just going to add this, and I think everybody here understands this. It is already illegal to kill people. It is already illegal to do a lot of the things that these people do. And I don't understand how anybody believes that banning certain things or passing laws to prevent certain things are actually going to prevent us from the tragedies, the horrible tragedies that are happening in the United States. We need to make sure, again, that's why I go back to the societal issues. We need to make sure that kids, young kids, especially young males, understand that they're valued and that we're willing to protect them and we're willing to stand with them. And we need to do a better job as a society. And we need to stop looking for these band-aids that are not going to solve the problems. One question that was asked, the Washington Post actually said that there was no gun law that would have prevented the last shooting that occurred at a school, because there's very few things. It makes people feel good to talk about gun laws, but it doesn't protect us any more than current law protects us. We just need to have a societal change, and I think we need to do that.
You guys are brutal tonight, beating each other down. All right, so last question, and then we'll get to our closing statements. Senator Feinstein, and I believe the Trump administration is... She's a favorite with our group.
Are you just going to run the gamut and bring up Pelosi and everyone else too?
Well, hold on a second now. Unless I'm mistaken, I believe Mrs. Sarah Huckabee Sanders also said that raising the age limit to purchase certain types of firearms is on the table for an AR or an AK. So rather than being 18, you would have to be 21. The current age limit is 18. That they can go in there and purchase rifles. Well, she says, well, handguns are 21. Let's raise the limit to purchase these rifles to 21. And I believe the Trump administration is actually considering that. Is that something that you would support, or do you oppose raising the age limit? Moving on. Opposed? Opposed. All right. Well done. All right, so now we're going to have a quick 2-minute closing statement from each candidate, and they can make their pitch to you as the best for your gun rights here in the state of Idaho. And I believe Dr. Alquist will be going first for the closing statement.
I just again want to thank all of you for being here tonight and for what you do for our state. Again, we live in the greatest state in this country with people that love this state, hard-working people. They love their families. They love God. It's okay to talk about that in Idaho. Isn't that great? I think in the coming years it'll be great for Idaho to stand as that example on several things. And I believe the Second Amendment is one of those. We should be the shining example in this great country of what the Constitution means, what our freedoms mean, and stand up proudly to support those freedoms. We've got a few more weeks and this thing will be over. We have great choices in this election. I hope you just give us all a good look at our platforms and what we stand for and what we want to do to take this state forward and build an even better Idaho. because we do have that heritage. We have those values that are there. But I believe we can do better. My goal and the reason I'm running is I'm so tired of it being Idaho and Mississippi in education, Idaho and Mississippi in jobs and wages and all of the things that matter to the families in Idaho. One out of 3 Idahoans lives in poverty or paycheck to paycheck. We're 43rd in high school graduation. 19% of kids graduate college and career ready. We lead the country in minimum wage, and dang it, it does not have to be that way. With leadership from the executive branch of our government, working with our good legislature, doing the things that we know will work, we can lead this nation in the things that matter to the families and to the small businesses of this state. If you're a big business, you're taken care of perfectly well right now. But if you're a small business and a family, you need someone to fight like hell for you. And that's what I promise to do if you give me a shot. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
You know, thank you very much for the work that you do. It's so important that as citizens, you hold us responsible and accountable. I kept laughing every time you kept saying that we're recording this and we're recording this. But when you think about who you're going to choose as your next governor, you need to decide who has actually kept the promises that they made to you as a congressman, as a legislator, in all facets of their lives. And you will see from my record that every single time that I have been clear with the people of Idaho on the issues that I think are important, that I want to fight for, and I have been clear on the things that I'm going to do, and I have followed through on those promises. This race is about courage, and it's about judgment. It's about making sure that we make the right decisions at the right time. We need a governor who's willing to stand up against special interests. We need a governor that's willing to stand up against the powerful media sometimes that tries to get us to do things that we shouldn't be doing because they try to shame us into maybe giving away our Second Amendment rights or anything like that. We need a government that sometimes might even be willing to stand up against its own party, which I have done. And every one of those things I have done. And I have done strongly. I have done it because I think my job is to do exactly what I told you I was going to do. And as your governor, I will make sure that all the promises that I make to you and all the different issues, that I will follow through on those promises. Thank you for what you do. Keep fighting for Idaho. God bless, and have a wonderful night.
Okay, so real quick, again, we put a petition on each chair. If you support Stand Your Ground, please add your list, your name to the big stack out there that we have. We're really excited that you guys are able to come tonight. Up on the website, it's hard to see in here, but on your phones, if you want to get one of the special memberships, you can do it at the table. You can also do it on your phone and click on the donate. Don't click on the join because that won't have the listed special memberships, okay? Click on the donate tab. Now, something fun you can all do on your phone here real quick. So if you have access to your phone, pull it out. We created a poll just for tonight. So for those of you, sorry Josh, for those of you watching at home, or those of you here, we have a poll for who you believe won the debate tonight. Or maybe we shouldn't say that. Who do you believe will best protect your Second Amendment rights as governor? Based on the answers that you heard tonight, maybe you thought they were 100% the same. I think there's a little bit of difference in there, but so please take that poll. Yes. Somebody say something.
And I appreciate both of you gentlemen coming. And thank you very much.
Yes. My time, yes, big round of applause for our candidates. I want to thank them for coming out tonight. So, guys, again, our organization, we are a no compromise group. Whether you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, Green Party, it doesn't matter to us. If you come out and you fight against the Second Amendment, we're going to let your constituents know what you're doing. And we have done that across the state. We've done it in city elections, county elections, state elections. And so we want to make sure that your guys' rights are protected. Because to us, it's not any better if a Republican is in there trying to fight against your gun rights as a Democrat. We're going to try and protect your Second Amendment rights the best we can. And we can only do that with the grassroots support. And you guys have absolutely shown in the last 5.5 years that we've been doing this, that we can make a difference at the grassroots level, fighting as hard as we can. So, oh, there she is. She disappeared. So real quick, before we have a closing, I wanted to bring up Representative Zito, and she's going to give just a brief update on House Bill 444, which is the real hard stand your ground legislation currently. So please welcome Representative Zito.
Thank you all for being here tonight. It's a great honor to have everybody here, and it's awesome that these fine gentlemen would take time to share their opinions on the Second Amendment with us. Let's give them one more round of applause. So the update I have for you tonight is that House Bill 444 is still in the chairman of State Affairs drawer, so to speak. We're still after we get us a hearing. Don't know if it's going to happen, but you all are instrumental, so don't forget to write, don't forget to call, don't forget to let your feelings know. Don't forget to remind them that there are 7,000 signed petitions out here in the hall, that this is the legislation that you want. This was written for Idahoans, by Idahoans, and this is what people expect from their legislators. What I'd like to do also is I'm going to read our list of co-sponsors, and if you're here in the audience, I would appreciate it if you please stand up. And then at the end, we'll give them all a round of applause. So we're doing it in district order. So Representative Heather Scott, Representative Vito Barbieri, Representative Eric Redmond, Representative Mike Kingsley, Representative Priscilla Giddings, Representative Paul Shepard, Representative Dorothy Moon, Representative Ryan Kirby, Representative Greg Cheney, Representative Brent Crane, Representative Pat McDonald, Representative James Holtzclaw, sorry about this, Representative Randy Armstrong, Representative Jeff Thompson, Representative Barbara Ehart, Representative Brian Zollinger, Representative Ron Nate, and Representative Carrie Haynes. Representatives and your legislators and letting them know what you want. Please contact those who have decided to come on as co-sponsors and tell them thank you. You know, the water runs both ways here, and we need to make sure that those who do support us feel our appreciation for that as well. So with that, just hang in there, keep going. We'll do everything we can to get this bill passed, and then we are so looking forward to a time in the future when we have leadership who will work with us to make good things happen for the good people of the state of Idaho. Thank you. I also ask you to say the closing prayer. So if you would just bow your heads, pray with me, please. Our dear Father in heaven, we are so grateful to be able to gather here as defenders of freedom and as people who live in the greatest country in the world, under a constitution that was given to us by thy hand. Dear Father, we ask you to watch over us and guide us and protect us in all that we do. We ask you to bless our actions, that they will speak highly of thee, that we might live our lives in a pleasing manner unto thee, always, Father in heaven. As we end this great evening, please bless everyone who came here, that they might travel home safely. Bless us and guide us and watch over us, protect us in all that we do and all that we say. This is our prayer, humbly, Father, in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen.
All right, so I might have made a typo on the poll, so give me 1 second here.